Hello everyone, so today we're going to talk about the 40k battle maps because we have a decent amount of information. Creative Assembly recently presented their show and tell stream and it did go into quite a bit about the battle maps, which I'm quite surprised about. In fact, I have a whole host of notes on screen right now from their reveal stream, and the reason why I'm surprised is because they usually leave out battle map information until a lot later, and I mean a lot later. I remember when a bunch of content creators, including myself, got invited to try out the battles for Warhammer 3, which was basically just like the survival battle against Khorne. And that's all the context we got. We didn't get any other context regarding other realms. So this, so far, shows quite a decent amount. We haven't seen a lot of combat, barring just like 2-second clips, but we can talk about specifics. Now, the first thing they showed us was essentially a hive city. One of the less densely populated hives that we've seen in terms of lore, but it does vary, especially as there's going to be other factions here, meaning that this planet is controlled by other factions for a typical Total War campaign. Now, the planet itself is spherical, so we're able to go around it, which is kind of cool. I mean, that's going to be quite immersive as campaigns go, depending on the amount of space in planets, but they do specifically talk about the fact that it's got some key regions that you need to capture and that there's multiple planets per system. This isn't new. In fact, we have seen this with Dawn of War Soulstorm before, which was, well, is still one of my favorite campaigns. In fact, actually, I'm playing through Soulstorm recently because I miss playing the Tau. Creative Assembly did say that there was 3 different campaign types. One that would allow you to be done in basically a day. One that would be a little larger, so this is likely going to be something like this, a sector, and then one which is supposed to be like the typical Total War campaign, which I imagine would be much larger. I'm assuming it's since they're using this generation tool for the planets, which we'll talk about a little bit later, it's allowing them to make sectors, so a grand campaign map will have sectors that you can pick from. Every system of planets essentially is called a sector, just like in Soulstorm, like in lore, and it's going to be quite varied. And they've said it themselves. Sectors themselves could be quite large or quite small, depending on the amount of planets there. And I'm assuming moons also like represented in Soulstorm, as some moons end up becoming quite big fortresses for some Space Marine chapters, or hell, some races do colonize moons. Scale-wise, it does look a little larger than what Creative Assembly have shown, but they haven't showcased borders or any fog of war, so we're going to have to wait and see. But I do see the parallels when looking at not only their map, but this old-school Soulstorm one. And you can see details on said map. I do wish that they presented larger quality footage where clear hives are there, where it's going to be cities, probably some enclaves. It does very much depend. It's very likely that it's not fully complete just yet. You can see space stations too, which I do wonder what's going to be the case with that, if it's going to act like a moon, or it's just going to be there for just some extra accoutrement. Same thing with just the fleet over it. Maybe that's where they come from. If you're being a space marine, it could just be that you are a crusading force, meaning that you would arrive through your fortress monastery and then attack a location. These bits of information are quite important, but it does look like there is a lot of variance when it comes to this world. I know it doesn't seem so vibrant, but keep in mind it does vary on the planet. A hive city is going to be quite disgusting. It's going to be full of smog. It's basically going to be, well, England, right? I don't think a lot of people clocked onto it, but during the showcase there is a second planet. It's actually at the bottom there, which the texturing seems a bit all over the place. I'm not sure if there's just a lot of desert and a lot of grassland, but it's showing that, yeah, you know, they've got them all in sight. You can potentially see planets there. Whether this is just background or if this is the same planet from the same sector is yet to be known, but it's very likely going to be a planet from the same sector. It just makes a lot of sense that you should be able to see them, just like sometimes you can see planets in our own reality, whether the use of, you know, just like a telescope, or sometimes you can just see another planet. It would make perfect sense, just like in the Soulstorm campaign, to be able to see them all from just a basic view. This allows you to just keep an eye on what's going on, and since it's a Total War campaign, depending on the fog of war, you should be able to see what's going on, unless, you know, you've got an agent there which would clear it up, or there is something similar to agents. We don't know what they're going to be doing with that just yet. But keeping an eye on separate regions is quite important with Total War, because you want to see like what faction is becoming a bit of an issue before you start declaring war on certain factions. Or, well, you know, the player bias kicks in and everyone kicks your ass. Well, we have to see because this is a new engine. The fleet above does make me think that, yeah, maybe this is going to be your central base and then you start attacking depending on how things go. Or it's just like you've moved the fleet that way and that's it. But like for a Space Marine, it would be kind of cool if you had a faction of Space Marines that could not control planets and would in fact give it to the Imperium as a whole. Because there are some Space Marine factions which don't control planets. It's just fortress monasteries. What sucks is obviously we do know that right now there is no naval battles, so it's something that they'd like to do, but we don't know if it's actually coming or not. It'd be pretty disappointing if it's just like, oh yeah, because your armies move this way, that's it, right? It would be cool if that was the case for future campaign purposes, which I don't want to really like dwell on too much, but if they've got the big love for 40k, like they say they do, then they should know that, yeah, this could be a fun mechanic. Now, essentially, they mentioned that they've got a copy-paste system, which is going to allow them to make planets faster once they've got all the biomes done, and then it allows them just to make it quicker. I did see some people call that lazy. I mean, it's something that's kind of expected. It's not lazy. It's just there's a lot of planets, and some of them are going to be very similar. I do imagine, at least I hope, that the planets will have different borders at least, so it doesn't end up as a scenario where the planets in campaign form will look very similar to what we have in Warhammer 3 with battle maps, where we're seeing the same battle map over and over and over again. It's important to see a lot of different borders and regions, or else it's going to get really repetitive. So I think it's just basically just to get the outline styling, you know, what biomes and just effects the planets are going to have, and then they can just kind of work from it from there. I don't imagine we're going to get a full map from the very launch. In fact, I do think it's going to be more like Warhammer 1 style for like the grand campaign, and then start expanding as DLC and patches come in. Hopefully it's faster than the DLC and patch system that we're having for Warhammer 3, because my god, by the time that this game is over, I could be like dead, old age, you know? I will say it's a bit weird that they basically just showed one planet when they were focusing on campaign. Obviously, they did show a lot more battle maps. They're clearly fairly well ahead. This has been in production for quite some time now. So it's a bit strange that they didn't showcase a few planets for the sake of more hype building. This one looks very cool, but it would have been cool just to see a frost planet or one that's maybe corrupted by orcs. I'm imagining they're going to have some form of orc corruption just to see what things are going to go with that. If there was a Chaos planet, we'd see one with Chaos, but unfortunately they decided only 4 launch factions and no Chaos at the very beginning, which is very strange to me. It's literally just 2 Order races, 1 neutral with the Orcs, and then the Eldar, who I guess could kind of count as Order. Like, that's the biggest issue I have with the 4 launch factions. There should have been 1 Chaos one. I get that they wanted to have the Guard in there, because obviously they show up quite a lot. And they didn't want to do a day 1 DLC because of the backlash, which, again, fair enough. But it's very weird just to have essentially 3 Order factions and 1 neutral or destruction. Alignment for 40k is always a bit weird. Okay, we're going to start talking about the battle maps now, because they did say that there's going to be different types, and by that they mean terrain features. So you might have some more barren maps, you will have stuff with, like what is being shown on screen right now, which is kind of like medium density, and then high density ones like we saw during the trailer. Now there's a big amount of guardsmen there, meaning that they had a full 20 stack, I think, of guardsmen, which is cool. And they've got the UI off, but we can see the map borders, so we can see more or less how large this is going to be from their flyover. I do think it was mentioned that they were using the debug camera, meaning that, yeah, you're going to be higher here from this showcase than you might actually be in game. But we can see some deployment zones, I think. At least it kind of looks it that way. So from a medium density point of view and battle map point of view, it does look like there's quite a lot going on. I do like the styling. Like, this reminds me of Winter Assault. I know that sounds weird, but it's got that vibe, and I think that's a good thing because it's playing on people's heartstrings, right? This is likely why they decided to choose this map to showcase. It's definitely got a lot of terrain there. Now, we do know that terrain is destructible, so if there's like some fortresses, you'll be able to destroy that just to kind of like pave your way in, or, you know, if the enemy is hiding behind that, because there is cover-to-cover combat. They say that not everything can be destroyed, so I do wonder what terrain they say, yeah, like this can be destroyed, this can't be destroyed, and if it's going to be set onto the map physically, or if there's just certain rules when placing certain objects and doodads, like during their map builder phase. What I have noticed is a decent amount of tree acne, which I don't like. Now, people use the excuse when I talked about it originally that, oh yeah, you could just destroy the trees if you don't like it. It's not the case of that. It's more the case of, like, it's not realistic. The tree acne has always been a weird thing when it comes to Total War, and I was hoping that they'd fix it here. They started trying to fix it in Total War Warhammer 3, and then they just kind of stopped. I do understand that this game is still in production and things may change, but keep in mind that this is creative assembly, and usually when something is showcased, it means that it's done unless there's a decent amount of backlash, like, for example, what happened to the devotees of Sinesh. It's just a fear I have because I don't want to see tree acne everywhere, especially where it doesn't really fit. The second map they showed was the map from the trailer, I believe, which they classified this as more of a high-density thing. Loads of buildings, loads of pathways, and all I can think about at this time is, oh my god, pathfinding, right? Because Total War doesn't really have the best pathfinding, but this is a new engine, so things might be a little bit better. We have seen some showcases when it comes to Medieval 3, but nothing too concrete just yet. Isolated circumstances are usually done in terms of showcase to make sure that they're showcasing the best possible scenario. There's a lot of stuff going around, and they did say at this point that this is where, you know, you could see some battles already starting before you've even started. So there's factions fighting amongst each other. You might see orcs fighting against guardsmen, and then when you deploy, you'll go and rescue the guardsmen. Which there'll be some bonuses and stuff like that towards your campaign. That's something that was said in a previous info dump, but this does seem like there's a lot. There's a lot of cover, there's a lot of fighting areas. We've seen this battle map before through previous showcase, and yeah, I mean, it looks like it's going to be fairly large. That was on the trailer, I think, the battle map, the mini-map that he had said, showed off that this map is fairly large. Again, my only concern is really the pathfinding and how much stuff is destructible. If you can start using like field ordnance and just really destroying as much as possible, that would be freaking great. Again, they're doing this without the UI on. You can see the deployment borders, or basically what is the map borders, but you can't really see too much, which is a bit of a shame. It would have been nice for us to be able to see the deployment styles, because they do mention that there's different types of deployment styles, once again focusing on like left to right, up to down, and it does sound like it's going to be very tabletop style when it comes to deployment. But there is going to be classic Total War deployment too. They've stated that in this specific showcase. I feel like stuff like that is very valuable information, and it would have been nice if they would have shown some troops there just for the sake of scaling. Again, we did see a little bit of in the trailer, but I would have loved to see what of those pathways would have been with a tank, right? Just a nice shot, because like those units are kind of done. They could have showcased some work in progress stuff too, but I guess they're mostly just trying to seem as professional as possible, which, you know, it's fine when you showcase work in progress stuff. Scaling to see how big the map would have been better, or at least showcasing the UI and the minimap. The minimap would have been the most important thing, just so we could have actually just seen scaling. It might not be so important for people, but it's really important to me. And this is what I mean. They showed off units here, which is great to see. Some basic guard conscripts, I think they said it was. But this looks more like a traditional Total War map, right? You get a nice scope of the units there. I don't think they mentioned the unit scaling, like what type it is. A lot of people play on Ultra and Total War. I'm assuming that that's going to be the same thing there. But you have a lot of distance. You've got a decent amount of terrain, but nothing that is just overwhelming the map as far as I can see. A lot of stuff happening in the background, which can get a little annoying, I think. Just a lot of fire where there's no actual battle going on. You do get to see a basic deployment zone, which seems to be fairly large, more in the style of that of the tabletop, where you've got like a huge amount of area to kind of just drop off from. The terrain scatter does remind me of the tabletop, basically like the old form, still used by the old world, by the way. It feels kind of like D6+4, right? Like there's a lot of terrain in the center. Obviously, work in progress maps once again, but it would have been nice at this point to showcase some terrain being destroyed, just showcasing how that feature is going to work. There is quite a lot that I guess they're working on, but, you know, the emphasis there would have been nice to see in practice. Seeing this map did make me a lot happier and more optimistic for Total War, though, I must admit, because it is more of a Total War map. Last thing I want to see is just like non-stop, yeah, you know, hive cities, and hive cities. So this made me a lot more optimistic. So it's cool that they showcased at least one of each different type. And I imagine that there might be a lot more variants when we start seeing other factions come in. When we start seeing, like, Chaos Worlds, there might be a lot of corruption like we're used to with like the Realms of Chaos and Warhammer 3, but there might be some other things going on. I do wonder if they intend to put in some terrain features too, you know, actual terrain features that may change some stuff across the battlefield. I will admit that the backgrounds look great, especially when it comes to this map. It does give me a vibe of like, yeah, there is a constant state of war going on, plus, you know, just seeing some destroyed ships, all the rest, that really does add to the, well, immersion, right? So it's really, really important. It's something that we've seen obviously in other Total War games, more so when it comes to Warhammer, because obviously there's a lot more background stuff going on. But yeah, I just wanted to dissect this today, mostly because like it's a lot. It is a lot. They didn't really show too much, and I know there's going to be people complaining, saying like, oh, well, they didn't really show that much. But again, I'm still keeping with the idea that this game is likely not going to release this year. It's going to be next year. We're supposed to get more news in June, so I do wonder what's going to happen there. But until then, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. And hopefully it won't be too long until we start getting more news across the board. Have a good one, guys. Bye.